Performance time, come on and run some tests. We're going to find a memory leak. I've got no friends but virtual users. Soak test never end, it's performance time. Hi there, and welcome to Performance Time, the series where we look at the basics of performance testing with fresh eyes. And today we answer the question, what is performance testing? Maybe I should have answered that question in the first episode. Maybe not. But we're answering it today. So here we go. So what is it all about? What is performance testing? Well, performance testing fundamentally is any testing activity in which we are measuring or observing the performance of a software system. That's all it's about. So it has to be some kind of testing and it has to be about performance, but that's it. That's all there is to it. But often we get very fixated on a particular kind of performance testing, which is load testing. And I think the reason we fixate on it is that that's the fun, exciting stuff. We get to use tools and write code and do modeling and apply massive amounts of load to a system and watch it break. It's all very exciting, and so people get really caught up in it. But I want to make it very clear that load testing is not all there is in the field of performance testing. But what is load testing? What's it all about? Well, in the real world, software systems have many users most of the time. And not just users, but there are systems which consume services on other systems. So there are people, human beings, and there are other systems, and both of these consume services on our software, and by doing so, they place load on it. They put it under load. So, obviously it's not particularly feasible to invite hundreds or thousands of people to come along and manually log into an application and do some stuff and to get a stopwatch and time how long everything is taking. That's not feasible. So what do? Well, we use tools. We use tools to pretend that we are many people and many other systems consuming our services in order to put that system under load. And why do we do that? We do it to observe the performance of that system. So that's what load testing is. And in the next episode, I'm going to be delving into a little bit more about how load testing tools work. But right now, let's talk about the other stuff beyond load testing. What else could there possibly be? Well, here's one example, single user tracing. So this is when you are using a network proxy such as Fiddler or Charles, or maybe Wireshark if you want to get down to that low-level network layer, and you complete some activity on a software system and observe the conversation or the traffic between your client and the server. So what's the value in that? Well, so on a really simple example might be looking at the traffic between yourself and a website or a web application and seeing, hey, you haven't implemented client-side caching in the headers. Easy win. Let's enable that and speed things up. Or maybe you haven't enabled compression on the images and other resources. There's another easy one. Another one might be there's a particular page or transaction and it takes a long time and you want to figure out where is the time being taken. Maybe for a web page there's a particular style sheet, for example, which is taking a really long time, and say the whole page takes 10 seconds and 9 of those seconds are spent waiting on this particular style sheet to load. That's valuable information and it's related to performance, and that's why we should do single user tracing. The next one is batch job analysis. This could be, I work for an insurance company and there are jobs, big important jobs that run overnight, during the day, all the time. And sometimes I want to know how long do these things take and what is the impact on other activities or other users, and what is the server resource consumption when these jobs run. So when I run some of these jobs, I don't build a load test suite. I don't use a load test tool. I just make sure there's the sufficient data to process and I hit run or get someone else to hit run and watch the job go. So it's still analyzing the performance of this particular job and maybe how it impacts other things, but it's not load testing. The more we move towards continuous delivery, the more we start to build in automated quality gates around performance. And at the moment, many of these are quite simple, such as maybe every time you deploy, there is a little test which runs where one thread calls an API 50 times. And maybe it looks at the average or a percentile response time and compares it back to previous builds and says, is it degraded or not significantly, or does it meet an SLA, and that's it. So in this case, arguable whether a single thread is load testing or not. I'm going to argue in this case it's probably not technically load testing. It's just another kind of automated testing which is measuring performance. Likewise, something similar would be if you were already running automated functional tests and you started pulling timings out of those as well, just to get some indication of user experience. Stopwatch testing. There has been multiple times in my career where there is no other option or no cost-effective option other than dirty old stopwatch testing. Get someone to go in manually, do some stuff, time how long it takes. It's a kind of testing. It provides some information around performance. Therefore, it is part of performance testing. And my last example is footprint testing. This would be if you have a single user doing some kind of activity on a system, and in the background you're measuring what the footprint of that session or the user or that activity was. So for a very simple example, it could be what is the memory footprint of that user's session. So an example from my career, at a customer that was rolling out a terminal services remote desktop solution to all their staff, and they wanted to know whether all of their staff could potentially work from home and do a remote session, and if required, if there was some kind of storm and no one could get to work. And the key concern was memory on these terminal servers. So we did some footprint testing. We looked at the memory footprint of a single user session. We did some calculations based on the number of staff, and it turned out that their solution was able to accommodate every single staff member at the same time from a memory perspective, which was surprising, a pleasant surprise, but it was some value that we added doing some basic footprint testing. So there we go. That's what performance testing is. Any testing activity which measures or observes the performance of a software system. And load testing is just part of that. There's a lot more that we can do in the testing space around performance. So I hope that's useful, and I'm looking forward to delving a little bit deeper into load testing tools in the next episode. See you next time.